Oh man, happy Wednesday. It is the middle of the week. I hope you guys are doing good thus far. I hope you're doing great. I hope your week is treating you well. July 9th, 2025, on a Wednesday. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith, call me Q, and we on the corner, y'all. What's up? So, we are back at it. Wednesday. Alright, guys. We got three clips here tonight. Pretty short clips, so it'll probably be pretty fast. And that's on purpose tonight. But nonetheless, they're pretty decent clips, including the Christian clip. So, as a advocate for mental health and wellness, I ask that you guys be grounded and are regulated before you watch this because news can be triggering. If you are not grounded or regulated right now, come back and watch it later. But if you are, welcome to the live stream. So first up, shout out to CNN one-on-one with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. So this is Dana Bash, and she is pretty notorious for some pretty crazy interviews. Tonight, we have her having a one-on-one with Scott Bessent. They're talking policy, economics, all the things. So we'll take a look at that, and then we'll switch gears and go over to real time with Bill Maher. Shout out to Bill. We react to Bill often on the channel. It's just been a little bit. He covered overtime with Bill Maher, Dave Barry, Representative Wesley Hunt, and Paul Begala. So we're gonna see a little conversation that these guys were having. Then we will switch gears and go to DRN News. Shout out to them. Trump's hilarious White House clock story with Marco Rubio. So AC 16. We're gonna watch that. DRN News covered that. And then we're gonna end the live stream with a Christian clip. So we have Cliff Buell for the night. Every night we end the live stream over here with a Christian clip. We usually end with a clip from Cliff. Shout out to Cliff Buell. Go over to his channel if you guys get a chance and check his channel out. It was very dope. Alright guys, so with that being said, let's jump into the first clip of the night. Shout out to CNN, one-on-one with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
President Trump's big, beautiful bill is now law. And as he hits the road to sell Americans on that new law, the president is also facing another deadline this week. More than 100 countries have only 3 more days to meet the deadline he's set to make tariff deals. Here with me now to talk about all of that is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. Let's start with the new law and who it helps. The Tax Policy Center says the majority of the tax benefits will go to Americans making $217,000 or more a year. The Yale Budget Lab says the richest Americans will see their income rise by nearly 2%. The lowest earning Americans will see their income drop by 3% when factoring in cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. You argue that the benefits will really be aimed at the middle class. How does that square?
First, let's have a look at the Yale Budget Lab, because I was looking at their findings, and this week I actually went on their website. They're all ex-Biden officials, so I think we can discount everything they say. I encourage all your viewers to look at
discount all the Biden officials. That's what he said.
Staff, and it's just not right that what we have here is a middle class and working class bill that we. We are going to see wages accelerate, and we are going to see, just as we saw with President Trump's first tax bill, we are making permanent these tax cuts. And what happened in 2017, 2018 was the highest wage earners went from paying 37% of all taxes to 45%. So that's going to be permanent now. So permanently, the highest 10% will pay a higher percent of the taxes.
I should say that taking the Yale Budget Lab aside, there are Republican senators who are worried about affordability and who this all is going to affect.
Look, I think affordability, safety, and growth are the 3 things this bill is going to generate.
One of the tax cuts that are in here are for, and the president talks about them a lot, are on tips and overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Those are temporary. Why not make those permanent? They're only 2025 to 2028.
This is a big part of President Trump's agenda. So, we have what I call parallel prosperity here, that Wall Street has done great. Now it's time for working Americans to do great. And this is President Trump's agenda, so we've got it in for the duration of his term. And we will see if the next administration wants to do that.
And just talking about the affordability, how is making cuts on Medicaid programs, how does that, and how it affects the people who are at the lowest ranking when it comes to income, how does that help with the affordability crisis in America?
Well, first of all, the affordability and saving Medicaid, let's separate those. And only in DC is a 20% hike over 10 years, a cut. So Medicaid funding will go up 20% over the next 10 years. The people who Medicaid were designed for, the pregnant women, the disabled, and families with children under 14 will be refocused. The able-bodied Americans are not vulnerable Americans, so a work requirement or a community service requirement, that's very popular with the public, and many state programs have that now.
It might be popular, but it's not what the president promised. The president promised that there would not be changes to Medicaid benefits, and putting a work requirement is, by definition, a change to benefits.
No, there are no change in benefits. There's a change in requirements to get the benefits.
Yeah.
And what we are doing,
Now they have some
we are bringing
prerequisites.
back manufacturing jobs. We are bringing back working class jobs. By securing the border, we have already seen working class wages move up. So we are creating jobs. People can get off Medicaid and get a job that has good health care benefits.
In theory, that works, but I'm sure you've seen and heard a lot of the concern, including and especially from Republicans who are the most vocal in Congress, about the fact that those work requirements are going to be very cumbersome to actually prove, and it will inevitably force the people who need that Medicaid coverage off the rolls.
Well, first of all, the Republicans are not the most vocal on this. It is a group of Democrats who unfortunately seem to think that poor people are stupid. I don't think poor people are stupid. I think they have agency, and I think to have them registered twice a year for these benefits, that it is not a burden. But these people who want to infantilize the poor and those who need these Medicaid benefits are alarmists.
Yeah, but my impression of the Republican Party is that historically you wanted to cut through the red tape and not create more red tape. But I do want to move on because
well, no. But we've also wanted to put in work requirements, which somehow that was very popular under Bill Clinton, was popular under President Obama, and this Democratic Party blew out the deficit in 2020, and they never want to bring it back. But work requirements even poll well with the median Democratic voter, maybe not the fringe.
let's talk about tariffs. President Trump gave countries a 90-day pause on the sweeping tariffs he put in place back in April. That pause ends in 3 days. What happens on Wednesday?
We'll see. I'm not going to give away the playbook because we're going to be very busy over the next 72 hours. President Trump's going to be sending letters to some of our trading partners saying that if you don't move things along, then on August 1st, you will boomerang back to your April 2nd tariff level. So I think we're going to see a lot of deals very quickly. And Dana, we're going to send out probably 100 letters to small countries where we don't have very much trade. And most of those are already at the baseline 10%.
But you said August 1st. Do you mean what's going to happen in August?
So the countries will get a letter saying that if we have not reached an agreement, then you will go back to the April 2nd level.
Starting when? On August 1st?
On August 1st.
Okay, so there's basically a new deadline.
It's not a new deadline. We are saying this is when it's happening. If you want to speed things up, have at it. If you want to go back to the old rate, that's your choice.
And when you say that there's going to be a lot happening over the next few days and you don't want to give me the playbook, is there a playbook?
Sure, the playbook is to apply maximum pressure. we saw that the EU
Some
was
people
very
run that
slow
blood.
in
That's
coming to the
impressive.
table. 3 weeks ago on a Friday morning, President Trump threatened 50% tariffs, and within a few hours, 5 of the European
Yep.
national leaders had called him, and Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the EU, was on the phone, and the EU is making very good progress. They were all to a slow start.
The president said some countries could end up with tariffs as high as 70%. Which countries is he talking about?
I think you go back and look at the April 2nd levels, but again, none of those are major trading partners. There are 18 important trading relationships that account for 95% of our deficit, and those are the ones we're concentrating on.
Are you close to any deals before Wednesday? I know you're talking now about August 1st, but where are you on?
We are close to several deals. As always, there's a lot of foot dragging on the other side, and so I would expect to see several big announcements over the next couple of days.
Can you name names?
I'm not going to name names because I don't want to let them off the hook.
Okay. When you talk about these letters and you talk about kind of the 90 deals in 90 days, or at least the president did back in April, so far that we've seen 3, and they're not concrete deals the way that we're used to seeing trade deals, they're frameworks. Mm-hmm. The president has a reputation, self-described deal maker. So why haven't we seen the kind of deals that he promised in the last 90 days?
Again, he didn't promise this, and when we send out the 100 letters to these countries, that will set their tariff rate. So we're going to have 100 done in the next few days. And
that's not a deal, that's a threat.
No, that's the level. That's the deal. If you want to trade with the United States, this is.
But that's not a negotiation, that's just a
well, many of these countries never even contacted us. So that's the thing about being the deficit country, Dana, is when you are the deficit country, you have the leverage. These are surplus countries that they have exported more to us than we export to them. So we have the leverage in the situation.
You know, when I talk to small business owners, both doing interviews with them and just in and around in my life interacting with them, I have not met one who has not said it's the uncertainty with the tariffs that is making it so hard for them to do business because they're kind of frozen in place. What do you say to those business owners?
Well, I'd say 2 things is, the other thing they would probably have been telling you is it was the uncertainty around taxes. So with the one big beautiful bill, they now have great certainty on taxes.
No, they said tariffs.
No, but let me finish. When I'm out talking to businesses, they want trade and taxes. So we have certainty on taxes now. All businesses know that they'll be getting 100% expensing for new plant and equipment. On tariffs, again, it is the 18 important trading relationships, and we're moving through those.
She obviously didn't like the way he answered the question. She said, no, they said tariffs. He's like, okay, give me a second. When I'm talking to businesses, they're asking about trade and taxes. Yeah, he makes it, when he says hit it with full force, that's why in the background I just kind of laughed because I said a lot of people would say President Trump's already moving like he's crazy. Don't go full force. But like he said, the minute that President Trump let them know that the tariffs were going to go right back in place, deals came to the table right away. So this is what he's using. He's a good deal maker. So she asked why we haven't seen some of these deals. He's being careful. Some things he's busy. Some things it's not necessarily busyness, but working out quirks behind the scenes. So I could appreciate Scott Bessent. I happen to like him a lot. I think he's pretty straightforward into the facts. I thought President Trump did a good job at choosing him. All right, guys. So we're gonna switch gears and go over to real time with Bill Maher. Overtime, he has Wesley Hunt on here. Paul Begala, and Dave Barry, representative. So let's take a listen to this here. Let's take a listen to this conversation.
Dave Barry, and he's a Democratic strategist and CNN political contributor Paul Begala, and the Republican congressman from the 38th in Texas, Wesley Hunt. Okay. For the panel, what is the panel's reaction to Arnold Schwarzenegger saying that immigrants should behave like guests? Well, they're truncating that a little, but that is basically what he said. And he is, of course, an immigrant himself. He came here with nothing but a loincloth and a jar of protein powder, and look how far he got. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
I completely agree.
Okay, good.
And someone should tell Elon Musk. This country took Mr. Musk in. We gave him freedom. We gave him an opportunity. We gave him $465 million of a loan under Barack Obama.
Okay.
Well, he paid back early. I give him credit for that. But we made him the richest man in the world. And all he does is dump on America. So he ought to be a pretty good guest, too. I like Mr. Musk.
I think Schwarzenegger should learn to speak English. If he wants to stay, I mean.
Okay. This is for you, Dave. What do you make of the Californians who are moving to Florida? There is
And Texas.
and Texas, yes.
My neighborhood, I have Californians moving in. We have lots of people coming. Florida, everyone makes fun of Florida. I think Florida's got a bad reputation. But I mean, think about it. There's 23 million people in Florida, and is it fair to judge 23 million people because of the behavior of 21 million people? But they are lured. They come for the culture, by which I mean we have no state income tax. And they like that. They like that a lot.
That's what I mean. He's not a humorist. He's a comic. There's a difference between a humorist and LOL. Okay. For Wesley, what was behind the rightward shift of black men toward Trump in the last election?
I think I touched on that a little bit. I think whenever you have a candidate like Kamala Harris that clearly was not the choice of the Democrat Party, when she got shoehorned into that space, and then you tried to roll out Megan Thee Stallion and Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, everybody was trying to say, hey, black men, let's vote for this now. I mean, it just really didn't work.
Well, most of them still did.
Well, one in three black men in the state of Texas voted for President Trump.
Okay, well, that's
This is
men
true.
in the state.
Well, I'm being very specific because it does matter. We don't see a seismic shift, and that's the most voting highs that we got in the Republican Party in the history.
No doubt about it. Trump did better with minorities across the board.
Oh, yeah.
Each time he ran, including the time he lost. But you know, he does want to like take Trump is putting the Robert E. Lee name back on buildings. I mean, are you down with that?
So when I was at West Point, I actually lived in Robert E. Lee Barracks when I was there. And as I said,
Robert E. Lee went to work.
yes, he did. That's why the barracks is named after him. And so my brother, sister, and I all matriculated through West Point. We all graduated. And I'll never forget walking under
like
the first
Wesley
floor of
Hunt,
Robert E. Lee
too.
Barracks and thinking to
He's a good
myself,
guy.
damn,
Stand up, dude.
this is one hell of a country. Because only in America can someone like me walk into a building named after a Confederate general and then be a successful West Point graduate. If we start changing the names on buildings, then every single building would be named Jesus Christ based on perfection. Let's talk about where we have come from. Well, maybe not to you, but to us. Maybe not to you, but to us. Moses. I bring that up because I want to talk about the progress, and the idea of us changing names on buildings actually doesn't harken us back to times where they weren't as good.
And statues,
and how
too?
can we not? Oh, I am. My wife is. I've been black my whole life.
Yes.
So far, still. My wife is white, and we have 3 biracial children, and I cannot wait to show them and take them to places that wasn't always the case. There was a time when your mother and daddy could not be married. My children are going to have the opportunity to be second line down in New Orleans, and then my wife is from Iowa. They'll be on the farm with their grandfather in Iowa. That is America, and I do not want to take down these statues and change the name of these buildings because they're a reminder of what was, and if we don't remember it, we are doomed to repeat it.
So there's a reason for it, I see. What do you think of Whoopi Goldberg saying it's worse to be a black person in America today than a woman in Iran. I say we were talking about the trans issue before, and the New York Times really has come over on that to the sort of the sensible, liberal, not crazy woke position. I think this is great first step toward getting the Democrats back to sanity, and a second good step would be we got to do something about The View.
Seriously, though. We gotta do something about The View. It's great for
It's
reaction.
huge in Iran, though.
When I
Imagine The View in Iran, all with the same head cover. Can't even tell which one is which.
My district in the great state of Texas is actually a white majority district that President Trump would have won by 25 points. As I said, I'm a direct descendant of a slave. My great-great-grandfather was born on a Rosedown plantation. I am literally being judged not by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. That's the progress, because, like, a lot of white people had to vote for me. A lot.
So wait,
So I don't even ever want to hear Whoopi Goldberg's conversation about how it's worse to be black in America right now. That's a bit far. And my father, who's 75 years old, he was a man that was in the French quarters that had to go get a sandwich to the back door of the building. And his son is now a United States congressman in a white majority district in Texas as a Republican. That is America. That's America.
All right.
Let's celebrate that.
So I like Wesley.
One of the ways we celebrate it is Juneteenth. It's a Texas holiday, began in Texas in Galveston.
Galveston,
General
right.
Granger
Galveston,
came
Texas.
and read the order number 3 that finally abolished slavery months after the war, because the war took a time to get to Galveston. We celebrated that when I was a kid in Texas, but it becomes national a year or two ago, and Donald Trump doesn't want to celebrate that. To me, it's exactly what you're talking about.
So-
Is it 600,000 people died so that we wouldn't enslave people anymore, and the fact that freedom won is a good thing. We should honor that. That's what Juneteenth's about. And I don't know why President Trump didn't want to honor that.
So I don't want it. I don't want Black History Month. I don't want all these days for make everybody feel special. I'm the 80s baby. Everybody's too sensitive anyway. We're all Americans anyway. This holiday
That's what
came.
Morgan Freeman said.
Morgan
He
Freeman,
said,
I can't agree more with him.
Yeah, he said that to Mike Wallace. He said, I'm an American. Do you want to be called a Jew American, Mike?
No.
I'm a.
White people celebrate Juneteenth too, and non-Italians celebrate Columbus Day. And
I'm all for any holiday.
I'm half Irish. Do I get half the day off on St. Patrick's Day?
But a lot of
You have to.
everybody gets back to St. Patrick's Day. That's a good point.
Did you have a question for the congressman?
No, are you telling me you're black?
Yes.
You don't see color, right?
You can see
All right, one more. This is for you, Dave. What do you make of the Lakers selling for a record $10 billion, the highest price ever paid for a pro sports team? Oh my God.
$10 billion.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing. I bought into the Mets in 2011.
So
You own part of the Mets?
I did for 10 years.
Wow.
The Mets sold 40% of the team, not all to me, to a select group of minority investors. And at the time, they were
Are you black too?
Yeah.
He said, "Are you black
I was amazed that I mean, it took like all the pennies I had saved
No,
my
I
whole
would
life,
say
but I
yes
was
at
amazed.
first.
How can I do this? This must be so many richer people in New York. I said, sports teams are always going to go up, especially the one in New York. The Mets at the time, they were in the shitter, so they were undervalued at $750 million. And they sold, they sold out I don't own the team, but part of the team anymore, because they sold a few years ago to a billionaire for $2.4 billion. So I made a good profit off that. But that was only a few years ago. And this is New York. This is New York. That's the Hicks sports franchise. 4 times that for the Lakers. $10 billion. I don't know what the question is, but it blows my mind.
The reason is I just wanted to say this is the day after Juneteenth. I just really want to thank God that black people are allowed to play in sports, because otherwise it would be valued nearly that much. Let's be honest. If the NBA was all white, it would be the NBA, I'll tell you that. It would be a good luck.
I know. I was sitting at a Laker game with, I won't say who, because I say I'm name dropping, but a big black stud. No. And I was saying, by Bill Russell, what a great player, and he said, yeah, he played against a lot of white guys.
So that doesn't count.
That's 1 month. We'll be back August 1st. Thank you very much.
Yeah, shout out to Bill Maher for having him on. I really wanted to see some things Wesley Hunt was going to say. I like that guy a lot. Republican from Texas. He was also one of the people that when President Trump was picking a VP, some people actually wanted him to go with Wesley Hunt. Then you had Tim Scott from South Carolina. But I like Wesley Hunt a lot. You had Byron Donalds from Florida. So there were a couple of African-American men that they threw in there that they thought would be good for President Trump to pick. Hey, it worked out with JD, so it is what it is. But I like Wesley Hunt, so I wanted to just listen to a couple of things that he was talking about. I like that he talks about not taking down the statue just for the sake of if we don't remember, we'll repeat. Like, things like that make sense, you know, even a therapist will say things like that. So I really like the guy. I appreciate how they talked about policy and, you know, how he's approaching it. Bill Maher, over the years, what I can appreciate is that he's become a lot more center than being so far left. And I can appreciate that. You see that trend with Stephen A. Smith as well. But I can appreciate it with Bill Maher. He's had some really good people on, some really great conversations as of recent within the last couple of years. Went to the White House and had dinner with President Trump. So he's been making leaps and bounds towards the center, and I can really appreciate that. All right, guys, so we're switching gears now. We're going to DRM News. They covered President Trump's hilarious White House clock story with Marco Rubio. All right, let's take a listen.
This president on immigration, he was very strong at the borders, very, very strong. And sometimes he could be too strong. He was strong at the borders, and during a certain period of time, they were so strong that almost every farmer in California went bankrupt. We have to remember that. We have to work together. We have to remember that. But he was a very good president and a very good general and a very good president, and I thought he deserved to. But he was, you know, he was a four-termer. He was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And if you notice, there were a lot of ramps outside. You have ramp, people say it's an unusual place for a ramp. It was because of him. He was wheelchair bound. But he was an amazing man. It's an amazing portrait, and we used to have him in the room, a different portrait, and it was a terrible portrait. It was almost like it was done by a child. And I used to say, you know, I can't believe that he would have approved of that portrait of himself. And I was in the vaults and looking at things. I said, what's that? And we have some great curators here. We have 6 curators at the White House. They have 2 for paintings, they have them for furniture, they have them for different things. I guess cost is no object. Okay, costs. Maybe I'd have 1, but that's all right. But we have 6, and they're very talented, though. And he said, that's a picture of FDR. I said, really? Let me see it. They took off the wrappings, very well preserved. And I said, that's the picture they've been looking for years. That was the picture of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I said, oh, wow. And likewise, that fit, see frame-wise, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work if you have, I want to be nice, but it doesn't work if you have a big frame, a little frame, but it's like perfection. I'm a perfectionist. The mirror was down in the vaults also. I said, where is this from? And it's a very old, very storied mirror, beautiful. We put that up. And then over there is Honest Abe Lincoln. And that picture was in his bedroom. And we thought that this would be a very important place because this is where wars are ended. I'm not going to say wars are declared. I'm going to say wars are ended. Okay, we'll be positive. And that's the picture of Abe Lincoln from his bedroom, sat in the bedroom for many, many years. That was his favorite picture of himself. And the Lincoln bedroom is very famous. You remember when Bill Clinton had it and he rented it out to people. We don't do that. It's an incredible room. And we took that picture from his bedroom. That's Abe Lincoln. And then over here you have John Adams, and it's they were the first occupants of the White House, 1,800. And John Quincy Adams, Mrs. Adams, they were the first occupants. So we have them looking at each other, and in between their stare is Abraham Lincoln trying to make peace. And that picture was in a room that I have that was not important, like the cabinet. I gave it up. I said, I have to give it up because that's one of the greatest pictures of the White House. The White House is tremendous art. And the Oval Office, when we're there, we'll go over that. That's really been something. Then we got the drapes, so we got the whole thing. We got new drapes. We got new, wasn't a big expense, very, very small. And we took some of the Chinaware and silverware and trophyware, they call it, from the vaults, and we had it cleaned up. Hadn't been shined up in 100 years. Some of this has sat in the vaults for over 100 years. Amazing. Over 100 years. Many of the pictures that were put up in the Oval Office as an example, those two as an example. So he was president. They moved in 1800, and he won the election, I believe, in November of 1800, John Quincy Adams. And we thought that would be, he was considered to be a good president, and he was the first occupant of the White House, so it sort of made sense. And I love the frame of those pictures. Look at those frames. You know, I'm a frame person. Sometimes I like frames more than I like the pictures. And we have the flags of the Marines, and Space Force now has its own flag. I'm very proud of Space Force, but the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, the whole thing. And Coast Guard is right there. You never forget the Coast Guard. They do a great job. So we have the flags throughout the office. And it's really become quite a beautiful place. I don't want to tell this, Marco pointed it out. I was going to leave the clock. So as president, you have the power. If I go into the State Department or Department of Commerce or Treasury, if I see anything that I like, I'm allowed to take it.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm in Marco's, I see this gorgeous clock, grandfather clock, and there it is. I said, Marco. I had to read him the rule and regulation. I said, Marco, I love this clock. Look at it, it's beautiful. He said, what clock? I said, the clock that's in the other room is incredible, and nobody gets to see it there. Marco, I tried to talk him into it first, and it sort of worked, and then I had to use a little more. I said, I'd love to take that clock out and put it in the cabinet room. He said, no, are you serious? I said, Marco, I have the right to do it, Marco. And he said, all right, what the hell? That's his contribution to the cabinet room, but it's, by the way, it's an incredible clock, and you know, it's an important room, so you may see it again, maybe we'll move it back. Anyway, so that's pretty much it, but it really is great. Here we put out, you know, these lamps have been very important, actually, whether people love them or not, but if you see pictures like Pearl Harbor, and Tora Tora Tora, you see movies about the White House where wars are being discussed. Oftentimes they'll show those lamps or something like those lamps, something that looks like them, probably not the reals, because I don't think they were allowed to. This is a very important room. This is a sacred room. And I don't think they made movies from here. You never know what they do. But they were missing medallions. See the medallions on top? They had a chain going into the ceiling. And I said, you can't do that. You have to have a medallion. They said, what's a medallion? I said, I'll show you. And we got some beautiful medallions. And you see them, they were put up there. It makes the lamps look better. So we did these changes. And, you know, when you think of it, the cost was almost nothing. We also painted the room a nice color, beige color. And it's been really something. The only question is, will I gold leaf the corners? You could maybe tell me my cabinet could take about. You see the top line moldings. And the only question is, do you gold leaf it? Because you can't paint it. If you paint it, it won't look good because they've never found a paint that looks like gold. You see that in the Oval Office. They've tried for years and years. Somebody could become very wealthy, but they've never found a paint that looks like gold. So painting it is easy, but it won't look right. And the question is whether or not we should gold leaf it. Linda, do you have an opinion? You like it the way?
No.
You'd gold leaf it? Who would gold leaf it? Could I hear you? How about, would you gold leaf it? Well, McKinley was a great president who never got credit. In fact, they changed the name of McKinley, and I changed it back because he should have been. The people of Ohio were very. He was the governor of Ohio. The people of Ohio were very happy when I did that. They were very insulted. They took the name of Mount McKinley off. That was done by Obama a little while ago, and I had to change it back. I changed it back. He actually was a great president. He was a president. He was the tariff, the most, I guess, since me. I think I'm going to outdo him, but he was a tariff president. He believed that other countries should pay for the privilege of coming into our country and taking our jobs and taking our treasure. That's the way he explained it. They took our jobs and they took our treasure, and for that they should pay. And he made them pay, and he built a tremendous fortune. In fact, in 1887, they had the Great Tariff Committee was set up in 1887 because our country had so much money, we didn't know what to do with it. And they set up a committee of, as they called them, elites, a term that we have to change because I think a lot of the people that
This is one thing I can appreciate about President Trump is that he's going to be himself. He's literally sitting in a cabinet meeting talking about, should we go leaf it? Raise your hands. I'm like, oh man, he's going to always be apologetically himself. That story about Marco Rubio and the clock was pretty funny. He goes, at first I just said, Marco, I have the right to do it. And then he said I had to be, a little bit more firm. So I just wanted to play that just so we can just get a look at, inside the cabinet meeting, some light things President Trump was talking about. Because like I always talk about in the beginning of the live stream, news can be very triggering. So sometimes it's nice to watch something a little lighthearted. All right, guys, here we are at the end of the live stream. We got a clip from Cliff Buell. Shout out to Cliff Buell, YouTube Christian content creator. Tonight's title is, how do you pray for these people? Let's take a listen.
We pray for someone who's done evil to us. Watch this.
How do you pray for someone who's done evil to you? Do you pray that the Lord blesses them, or how does that all?
Well, you surely don't pray for somebody who's doing evil that will continue to do evil. But I pray for them. Lord, I don't know why this person did this to me. I'll be honest with you. This last week, I had somebody threaten my life.
Wow.
And it scared my family, and it scared me, and everybody wanted to put a restraining order on this person, but really, I called his wife and told her I was on her side and that this wasn't going to take us off our course. And I pray for this man because I know he's not thinking straight, and I know he's having a hard time in his life. That's how you pray for somebody. You pray for, usually people who do those things have so many problems themselves that what they're doing to you is just an overflow of the stuff they're dealing with. People who hurt.
Yeah.
So pray for them. Pray that God will heal them and make them better.
Yep, I totally agree. And on the flip side of that, people who are healed, heal. And it's so true because, the question the lady asked is such a common question I get when I get to sit in groups, with people, and they're asking questions, like common questions that maybe newer Christians might ask. And this question might come up often, maybe even if it's not a newer Christian and they're just struggle praying for someone who has done something not just wrong to them, but done it deliberately. That's when it even gets harder, right? And they're like, well, how do I do this? And the person, they knew what they were doing, and if anything, they dug their heels in deeper. And it's always hard at that point. And I agree with what Pastor Jeremiah says when he says, a lot of those times those people have so many things going on themselves that what they do is just an overflow. And I was going to say, absolutely. It's just an end result of who they are when no one is looking. That's what they do to people. And it's sad, but there are people out there. I don't believe a lot of the times they know what they're doing in the sense where they know maybe on any given day how much they're causing a person to cry or how much pain they're inflicting, right? Or how unkind they've been. I don't think they keep tabs like that. Because if they did at some point and they were really seeking to be a better person, things would change. So that's not the case. But what I do think is that they're extremely self-absorbed. So they just can't tell just how bad the blow is. It's almost like, there's an impact, but they can't tell, how much damage they're inflicting on you. And a lot of that's because they're numb. They're going through things in their own life, and they're so numb to what they're going through and the pain that they're trying to get through that when they're inflicting it on others, they're not compassionate. They're not thinking about am I causing this person to lose sleep at night? You know, am I being extremely unkind? Am I being a tyrant of a boss or of a friend? They're not thinking like that. With time, maybe when the Lord decides to reveal things to them, or decides to allow something to happen that will shake or wake them up, then you kind of see that consideration start to come to the surface. But before that, they're not thinking about anyone except themselves. So when he says that, that's how you pray for them. Lord, I don't know why this person did that, but, you know, just give me the courage to continue to be faithful to you. You know, help me to be able to pray for them daily, even though they do mean me harm. And I think that that's a godly thing to do. All right, guys. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap this live stream up for tonight. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, so usually Thursday's a later night for me, but I am going to get on before 10 because I want to. So I will see you guys tomorrow night. With that being said, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves, love one another, and be peaceful. Peace.